It's been 10 trillion years since I wrote the script for this video, so we're just gonna have to deal with it. Fire Emblem Three Houses is one of my favorite games of all time. In my opinion, one of the greatest games ever made. Now, I like it because I love its story and characters, like the diverting storylines, all of the political intrigue, all of the characters, all of the male characters in particular. They're all super hot, you know. You know what I'm talking about. You know, I mean, Fire Emblem fans, we're all a little bit horny. It also has like good gameplay and whatever, but who cares about that? It's all about the story, bro. The story, the branching route. So, as you can imagine, I was super excited and hype when a spin-off was announced, a warrior-style spin-off. And now, lots of people don't like the warrior-style spin-offs, but I don't care, because the gameplay wasn't my thing in the first place. All I wanted was more story and more hot guys. And you know what? It delivered. I did, in fact, get more story and get more hot guys. And when the game came out, I had thoughts about it. And I really liked it. Overall, I really liked it. And here's what I liked about it. You see, exactly what I stated above in the announced trailers. They delivered on all the things they promised. It was great. I loved Edelgard and Claude's new story paths. Oh my god, they're like so good. Two of my favorite routes out of like the whole Fire Emblem Three Houses, you know, extended cinematic universe. I like that, like, because of the new timeline with the new main character, everyone's making, like, distinctly different decisions than they did in the original timeline, such that, you know, it makes the game a completely different experience. It feels like you're not just, like, rehashing the old story. The stories feel very fresh and new. I might have said this before, but I love the new character designs. I love Hubert. I love Hubert's new design. And the others, too, but mostly Hubert. And, unlike the majority of the Fire Emblem community, I like the warrior-style gameplay. I like just being unga-bunga hack and slash. I think it's so fun. Honestly, I like Fire Emblem as like a series in spite of the gameplay. The gameplay's not really my thing. I love hack and slash gameplay. It's just so fun and simple. Oh, and speaking of the warrior-style gameplay, those animations are crazy. I loved all the animations in the new gameplay. Chef's kiss. I really like the new main character. They're much more interesting than Byleth, in my opinion, even though they do give off, like, this is my dark and twisted, edgy OC, kind of. But I like that they're kind of, like, a bumbling buffoon, kind of. They're more, like, relatable than Byleth, who is just, like, you know, a brick of styrofoam. And of course, I'll always be happy to have more Three Houses. It's just more Three Houses, more timelines, more interactions with the characters I like, more supports. I love Three Houses, and so I was happy to have more Three Houses, you know? But not everything was peachy keen with that game, okay? As anyone who's played the game knows, it's unfinished. Like, the whole game is unfinished. No matter what route you play, it's unfinished. Every route ends with, like, and you beat the final boss, and then the war kept going. You don't need to see it. We're just gonna keep fighting. The end. Like, okay, sweetheart. Is that like a commentary on, like, the nature of war and just, like, violence begets violence and how true peace is completely impossible? I mean, that's kind of deep, not gonna lie. Also, the political conflict in this one felt much less nuanced. Like, it's very much like, oh, we're the good guys and we're gonna go defeat the bad guys. Whereas in the original Three Houses, they have, like, the one ontologically evil bad guy, but, like, you know, you're kind of all on different sides of the war and you're kind of like, I can see where everyone's coming from, you know? It's a very interesting and nuanced political conflict. Whereas in this game, it's just like, yeah, those guys suck. We just need to kill them. I mean, it makes for a very satisfying story when, like, you're kind of, you know, morally all the way good and the other person is morally all the way evil. But it's not as narratively interesting, you know? They also did this weird thing where they, like, made all of the routes try to hit, like, all of the same narrative beats. And I'll get into that later, but they kind of try to shoehorn the same story structure onto every route to varying success with different ones. Like, I feel like some of them might have appreciated a bit more, like, breathing room, perhaps getting their own story structure, but, like, You'll see what I mean later. I might just cut this part out of the video. Some of like the new Lord characters they spotlighted were a little weird. So in the original three houses, they have the main lord of each house, and then they have, you know, the secondary lords, you know, being Hubert, Hilda, and Dedue. It took me a minute. And, like, it felt like they all kind of served, like, a larger purpose in the story as a whole. In this game, they give you sort of, like, a third lord that they fold into the lore and, like, make them unkillable. They're just like, ugh, I can't fall here. And since they're unkillable, they can appear in, like, pre-animated cutscenes and all that. And, like, some of the choices for, like, who to make that lord were kind of questionable, in my opinion. I'm just like, really? We're going with that character? Also, like, they introduce a bunch of, like, new open-ended lore with, like, the Agarthans, the Slytherin people, what have you, but they never really, like, wrap any of it up. I assumed that they were going to do it via paid DLC, but then the game didn't sell well enough to warrant them making paid DLC, so, we just get no lore ever, unless they shoved it into, like, Fire Emblem Heroes or something. Also, some of the new characters they chose to spotlight in some of the routes aren't that interesting to me. I mean, some of them were, like, kind of interesting, but, like, I feel like they just put them in there for, like, the trailers, and then, like, didn't do a ton with them in the story. Also, there's, like, no S supports. Like, there's no S supports, you can't marry anyone, which is super lame. Like, who wants to play a Fire Emblem game? Like, half the point of Fire Emblem is that the characters are hot, and you can marry the hot characters. But what's the point of a Fire Emblem game where you can't marry the hot people? Fire Emblem's just horny chess. And this game took the chess aspect out, and now they're taking the horny aspect out too. Like, what's with that? Also, they don't pair characters off in the end like they did in the original three houses. You know how in the original three houses you'd get, like, two opposite sex characters who were super close with supports in the game, and they'd be like, in the credits, they'd be like, oh, these two characters got married. And then they'd have, like, two same-sex characters that are really close to each other, and then they'd be like, these characters became best friends forever and were each other's true love, but they never got married. It's not that kind of love, you know, because, you know, gay people don't exist. But they meant everything to each other, and they died on the same day because they couldn't live without one another. I mean, like, as besties do. And the last bad thing, the thing we're making a video about today, and the reason I'm dressed in all blue, peep the nails, peep the magic wand, peep the bows, peep the whole outfit, peep Mousu, who I'm having a hard time holding because of my nails. But look at him. He's always blue, but he's extra blue just for you today because we're talking about Azure Gleam. It's Azure Gleam. Azure Gleam was kind of bad. It was a little bit stupid, you know, whatever. So let's get into it. First, though, I'd like to offer you a disclaimer. This is just my opinion. This is just the opinion of one lone unemployed game design college dropout. And for the record, I don't hate Azure Gleam, okay? The title of this video is that it's kind of dumb, not that it's strictly bad. Now, if you had caught me right after I first played through Azure Gleam, and I made this video then, I would have said, yeah, it's bad, it's terrible, I hate it, it's the worst thing to ever happen to Three Houses. It's the worst thing video games have ever produced. But my opinion has softened on it since then, you know? Because over time, I've gathered my emotions, and then later I played Fire Emblem Engage, and that game's story really made me appreciate the fact that Azure Gleam is at least trying to have a story of sorts. And then I played Fire Emblem Engage's DLC and learned to appreciate Fire Emblem Engage's main story. But we'll leave the Engage video for another day. And for the record, even though I'm going to be shitting on the Blue Lions a little bit and their route in this game, I still really do like all of the characters and all of their interactions and support. So, like, I'm not a Dimitri anti, don't get at me. I mean, if I was really anti-Blue Lions, I would have worn all red for this video, you know? Have, like, a little Edelgard moment. Your obsession with me is appalling. Also, I don't know where I'm going to put this in the video, but I've had this outline on my computer for, like, ever, and I was like, I'll record it when I get to it. And then Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave got, like, an official release date, and I was like, I should probably make this video before that comes out! Before this game is even more super duper irrelevant than it is already. So now I shall recount in a numbered list all of the reasons why I think Azure Gleam is just a little bit stupid. Reason number 1. Why are we fighting? So when you're playing a video game, and in said video game you're fighting a war and like killing a bunch of people, you kind of want to be assured that you're doing it for at least a not terrible reason. So let's explore what our reason is today. And let's start exploring that by exploring what our reason was in the original game. So in the original game, the whole central tension of the conflict in the war comes from Edelgard's convictions. You know, she's like, I'm gonna free everyone from the oppression of the church. And even though I'm doing a bunch of super morally dubious things while doing it, it's all worth it because the ends justify the means. So Edelgard's over here like, the ends justify the means. And everyone else is over here like, no they don't. And that is a very compelling story for the original game. The problem in this game is that Edelgard is still trying to free everyone from the oppression of the church, but she's not like nearly as morally dubious in this game. Like in the original game, she was doing a good thing, but she was doing evil things in service of her doing a good thing. For example, in the original game, she was teamed up with the Agarthans the whole time. You know, the ontologically evil dark magic users who, like, body snatch people. We're just gonna call them the Slitherers because it sounds funnier. She was sneaking around, doing a bunch of super morally questionable shit as, like, the Flame Emperor while working with the Agarthans. She disrupted that, like, holy ceremony thing with a sneak attack in which she told all of her soldiers to kill all of her friends if they resisted her at all. That's super not cool. She also like launched that big attack on the church while all of her friends were still going to school there, which kind of put them in a little bit of mortal danger. That's a little bit of a betrayal, no. And even post time skip in the original game, she lies to her friends a lot. Yeah, it's not the best look for her. But in this game, she's like way, way less evil. She breaks it off with the Slitherers, like, right at the beginning of the game. She's never disguising herself as the Flame Emperor, leading to a dramatic reveal that causes Dimitri's psychotic break. That was another thing I forgot to mention. No disruption of the holy ceremony. She starts the war after school's already been let out, so, like, there's no personal betrayal against her friends there. She's just kind of like, the church is bad and I'm gonna attack them, and only the church people are there, so, like, no innocents being caught in the crossfire. That's kind of nice of her. So then, like, why would Dimitri even want to fight Edelgard when he doesn't even have any particular problem with her in this timeline, and all she's doing is trying to get rid of the church, who are, like, you know, I guess they're not terrible people, but, like, they are kind of bad as, like, a political thing, and even during the game, like, Dimitri acknowledges that they're kind of bad as a political thing, so why are we siding with them? Well, because this is a video game, and in a video game you need a story, and a conflict requires two people to clash, and if Edelgard just defeated the church instantly, that would be no fun, so obviously Dimitri sides with the church so that we can play a game. Yay, thank you, Dimitri. But also, what's the in-story reason that we need to fight Edelgard? And it's complicated. It's very convoluted. So the plot reasons for why we're fighting Edelgard go back to the prologue of this game, not Three Houses. So in the prologue, you kind of do, like, a nice little political revolution thing. It's very demure, very mindful, very, very cute political revolt. You see Dimitri's evil uncle Rufus is like the king regent, and the king regent, him, is being controlled by the ontologically evil snake people body snatchers, the Slitherers. So we kind of have to kill him. So the evil king regent, Rufus, and the Slitherers, led by Cornelia at the castle, are in bed with some of the nobles in Fargus. So they're the bad nobles, and then on Dimitri's side are the good nobles. And so Rufus is conspiring with Cornelia and the evil nobles, this is so confusing, to take over the kingdom, you know, do a hostile takeover, depose Dimitri so he can, you know, be in power, and the Slitherers can essentially take over all of Fargus. But we cannot have that happen. So you, the main character, and Dimitri and all the Blue Lions friends, you go up to the castle and, you know, do a little revolt, little revolution. You kick the Slitherers out, and we overthrow the evil king regent, and then Dimitri decapitates him in front of like a jeering crowd. It's very cute. You gotta make an example when like you get it. So yippee, the evil was rooted out. We saved the kingdom, but the bad nobles that like teamed up with Rufus and the Slitherers, they're still like there and they're still in power, and that's not good. So, the political situation in Fargus is now super unstable because the bad nobles are still there. And so basically, Dimitri only has the power because him and the good nobles currently have the public favor of Fargus. Can I turn on my ceiling fan? I'm sweating. Is this going to be distracting? Sorry. This is just an autism thing. When I get super excited, I start sweating because I'm talking about things I'm passionate about. Don't mind the fan. Where was I? Yeah, okay. So, Dimitri needs to keep public favor so that the people don't side with the bad nobles and then try to, like, overthrow him, because the bad nobles are in bed with the ontologically evil Slitherers, and that would be bad if they took over. And Dimitri is the king of the holy kingdom of Fargus. Okay, it's very holy. Fargus is a very religious place, so if he doesn't side with the church in this conflict, then he's going to lose public favor with the people because they're super religious, and if he loses public favor with them, then the evil nobles are going to take over all of Fargus, and that would be bad, so we have to side with the church to save Fargus, even if it's to the detriment of the continent overall. I think I got that right. Yes, okay. According to my outline, that is correct. So basically, the reason for fighting is bureaucratic red tape, which isn't a super satisfying reason to fight a war and, like, kill a bunch of people, but it at least makes narrative sense, so I can accept it for now, at, like, the beginning of the story, and then maybe later we can, like, develop a good in-story reason to fight with, like, super cool moral conviction and be like the hero of the story and stuff. That would be super cool. And I'm sure that the writers of this game will deliver. Except that they won't, because if they did, then I probably wouldn't be making this video. Reason 2. Why are we fighting? Part 2. So clearly, I wasn't the only person who realized that the above reason for fighting like made sense narratively, but wasn't very satisfying from a gameplay perspective. Clearly the writers realized it too, thankfully, and so they gave us a new reason to fight, and this reason is very stupid. So the writers threw me a bone. They were like, okay, Cheatsy, we'll give you a little, like, new reason to fight, to, like, tie you over until the big change in the plot where you become the good guy. So there's, like, a dialogue between Dimitri and the main character. I forget if this is, like, a scripted story interaction or if it's a support or if it's something else, because I haven't played this game in several years and I'm too lazy to do any actual research on this video. Feel free to correct me in the comments. You can play the game if you want. The main character, like, prompts Dimitri in this, like, very fake way. He's like, Dimitri, isn't it kind of bad that we're on the side of the church? And Dimitri's like, no, actually, because you shouldn't do a violent revolution to overthrow the government just because it's bad. Instead, you should work within the system and make small incremental changes over time so as to not rock the boat too much. That's an exact Dimitri quote. I'm kidding, it's not. Because the ordinary citizens need time to adjust, so you can't make super big changes because, you know, that would be difficult for them. Not difficult for me. I'm not saying this because it's to my benefit. It's for the little guy. Like, you need to make little changes over time so that the people, you know, the ordinary citizens can get used to those changes. You know, doing too many changes over time, that's just bad for the populace, even if the changes are to liberate the populace, whatever. And so I can at least appreciate the fact that the writers are trying to give us a better reason to fight, but there are several reasons why this reason is just, like, really stupid. In fact, there are 3 reasons why this line of thinking is stupid and makes no sense, but because we're already in a numbered list, I'll switch to letters. So letter number A is from a political angle. So, like, in real life, in like a functioning democracy in the modern day, making small changes over time so as to not rock the boat too much is a valid-ish political strategy. Like, it's not one I personally love, but I can at least, like, acknowledge that it can work. But in this, in the game, we're not in a modern day functioning democracy. We're in, like, an ancient medieval theocratic dictatorship. And not only that, but an ancient medieval theocratic dictatorship run by someone who's literally an immortal dragon demigoddess. And I'm afraid you can't small incremental change over time your way out of that. And also, like, if you're under a dictatorship and you want to make small changes over time, all those changes have to go through the dictator. So, like, good luck with that, I guess. Number B, as to why this line of thinking is stupid, is just, like, the general hypocrisy of it. Like, Dimitri is like, you can't do a violent revolution to overthrow the government. That's wrong. But, like, remember the prologue where you did a violent revolution to overthrow your evil uncle, and then you decapitated him in front of a jeering crowd to set an example? That feels like political violence to overthrow a negative political regime. That doesn't really give incremental small changes over time. I say that with air quotes as if those are his exact words. They're absolutely not. So yeah, it was just a little bit hypocritical of Dimitri there. Like, it's almost like you recognized that that particular administration was immune to any other kind of reform, and so you took the necessary steps to dispose of them violently, which, in my opinion, and like what I've observed, is also what Edelgard's doing. So like, why do you have a problem with her doing it? Probably because it's not his kingdom, so it doesn't really affect him, but whatever. What do I know? I'm just someone who played the game 6 times. I have a third point for the hypocrisy bullet in my outline that just has question marks in it. I think I was meant to finish it later, but I have no idea what I would put there because it's been forever since I looked at this. Oopsie daisy. And letter number C. I did 3 with my fingers, but I said C out loud. Letter number C, for why this reason is dumb, is that it's just boring and lame. Like, the bureaucratic red tape reason as to why we're fighting is also boring and lame, but it, like, also made sense within the story. This one doesn't make sense within the story and is presumably here to, like, make us feel better about fighting, but, like, it's boring and lame. It's even more boring and lame than the last reason, so I don't even know why they put this here. Like, I presume that this flimsy justification for the war is meant to, like, stoke my moral conviction to fight, but it doesn't do that, and if anything, it just makes me think, like, less of the overall narrative as a whole. Like, at least the previous reason, while not satisfying at all, provided, like, an interesting, like, moral questioning, sort of, you know? A moral dilemma, that's what I meant to say. Had to read that from the outline. But this, like, new justification is just bad and hypocritical and lame. Like, why'd you even put it here? Like, it only takes away. It doesn't add anything. I'd also just like to point out that even if I bought into the whole making small incremental changes over time thing, like, this reasoning would still be lame, right? Like, I'm playing a war video game where I'm hacking hundreds of people to pieces per level, literally, because this is a hack and slash game, no longer a tile-based RPG. And what am I doing that in the name of? Small incremental changes over time. Like, when you're playing a war video game and you're hacking a bunch of people to pieces, you want to do it to, like, liberate a country or save a princess, do something, like, noble, not, like, preserve the integrity of the bureaucracy. There's also something very terribly ironic and weird about saying, like, you shouldn't use violence even if it's for a noble cause, and then using your own violence to stop that violence, which is for a noble cause, and the noble cause you're wielding your violence for is to stop the violence that the other people are doing for their noble cause. Did that make sense? Not really. Just keep it in the video, why not? Okay, reason number 3. Why are we fighting? Part 3. I promise this is the last one. The answer is mind control. Yep. Apparently the writers also felt how flimsy their previous 2 explanations were, so they just have the Slitherers mind control Edelgard, and now she's ontologically evil, and now you get to be the good guy fighting the ontologically evil bad guys. Yay! Like, I don't need to point out that this is extremely lazy and stupid, right? Like, you know that, right? Like, it feels like the writers, like, wrote themselves up against a wall, and then instead of finding a clever way to get away from the wall, they just blew the wall up with, like, Looney Tunes style Acme brand dynamite. Like, instead of grappling with, like, the dark moral implications of, like, oh, the side of the war that I'm fighting on might actually be in the wrong, and, like, sitting with that and grappling with that, maybe making some kind of decision about that, no, we'll just have the other side get, like, dark magic mind controlled so that they're now 100% evil and you can feel 100% good about fighting them. And, you know, I guess all of the morally questionable stuff you've done up to this point was all worth it because they turned out to be evil in the end. And, like, for the record, I get that the way the war is set up and the way that this story begins on all roots, it would be truly difficult to justify continuing to fight on the side of the church without using some sort of extremely stupid plot device. But that's when you go back and revise the beginning of the story, not just, like, throw in the towel and use mind control to solve all of your problems. Like, mind control is such a stupid plot device. It's right up there with amnesia, with, like, my 2 least favorite plot devices. Fire Emblem Engage has both, by the way. You might be able to interpret my feelings about that game based on that. Also, can we talk plot holes, babe? Mind control isn't a power that the Slitherers are confirmed to have in literally any other timeline in the Fodlan cinematic universe. So, like, really, you're just gonna throw it in here with no explanation? Also, if they've had this power the whole time, why haven't they used it earlier? Like, it seems pretty OP. Like, why haven't they just been mind-controlling Edelgard since the beginning? That seems a lot safer than having, like, a very tenuous, backstabby sort of alliance with her, no? Why weren't they mind-controlling Dimitri's evil uncle Rufus? Why haven't they just been mind-controlling Edelgard the whole time? I ask because at the beginning of the game, Edelgard literally betrays them, and it literally throws off all of their plans. And in the timeline of 3 houses, her relationship with them is extremely hostile. They're double-crossing each other at every turn. So it seems like if they had the power to mind control her this whole time, they should have done it earlier. So then I thought, okay, maybe they can only, like, mind control one person at a time. But then, like, but that doesn't make any sense either, because even if they could only mind control one person at a time, Edelgard is the perfect candidate for that, so again, why haven't they just been mind controlling her the whole time? I also thought that maybe they didn't mind control Edelgard because she's a super strong fighter, and maybe the mind control would, like, impair her usefulness because it would get rid of her good fighting abilities. But no, even though it gives her, like, the 1,000-yard stare in every, like, dialogue tree she's in when she's mind controlled, she can still fight just fine. In fact, she's part of the final boss fight for Azure Gleam, so again, just mind control her. I don't understand why they were, like, saving this ace up their sleeve. Just play the ace, bro. And also, just, like, a small thing I want to nitpick about the mind control, and I know this is a nitpick when the mind control thing is already so stupid, but, like, I need to read this off the outline because it's so complicated. It seems like Edelgard's mind control is coming directly from Talus, and in the extra chapter where all 3 lords and both of the main characters get sucked into Garatina's distortion world or whatever via confusing and unexplained dark magic, Edelgard's mind control is momentarily cured so that she can participate in, like, fighting in the chapter, suggesting that when she's away from Talus, she's no longer under mind control. But at the end of the game, Tallis dies, and Edelgard appears to still be under mind control. So I guess the mind control is proximity dependent, but not dependent on the caster still being, like, alive and stuff. I guess she just needs to walk like a few hundred yards away from his corpse, and then maybe she'll be cured of his mind control. Also, why introduce this whole mind control thing when the Agarthans already have the ability to body snatch people? Just have someone body snatch her and then, like, take her place and then have her lead the army as, like, an ontologically evil person. I don't think Cornelia was doing anything at this point in the story. She could have body snatched Edelgard. Did Cornelia die earlier in the story? It's been so long since I played this game. For the record, I still think body snatching her would have also been stupid, but at least it's a power that the Slitherers are already confirmed to have, so it wouldn't be introducing, like, a brand new stupid power that they could have been using the whole time. Also, it has more in-universe limitations. It's implied to be a very lengthy process in order to body snatch someone, and you need someone reliable to stand in for the person that they're body snatching. I think the reason that they didn't end up body snatching Edelgard was because they wanted Edelgard to keep living for, like, the purpose of the narrative of the story. And when someone's body snatched, it usually implies that the original host of the body is dead, so maybe they didn't want to do that so they could keep Edelgard alive. Not that they do anything with Edelgard being alive later in the story, so I don't really get that. I guess they just wanted to keep, like, the same continuity across the 3 different routes, because in this game in particular, none of the main lords die in any of the story routes, which is a big difference from the original game. They're extremely cavalier about killing off the main lords in the original game. Rip Dimitri in every route that isn't his, bro. At least he gets to come back as a ghost in Silver Snow. Also, mind control is a lazy plot device in any storytelling medium, but it's especially cliche in video games. Like, it's so lazy, it's so overused. Why are we doing this? Like, it's up there with Amnesia for, like, the worst and most lazy devices to use in video games. Side note, Fire Emblem Engage has both mind control and Amnesia as plot devices. You can probably intuit my feelings on that game's story just by that sentence alone. Honestly, like, I just wish this game would stop throwing new reasons to fight at me. Like, don't get me wrong, I'd appreciate a good reason to fight, but if all the reasons you have to fight are bad, just don't do it. If you don't have any good plot devices to share, don't share any at all. Like, remember that the initial reason we had to fight made narrative sense but wasn't very satisfying? Like, I feel like they're trying to make up for that by throwing all these new reasons at you. But, like, honestly, if they didn't continue to throw all these new reasons at me, I might have just forgotten that the original reason was unsatisfying in the first place, because at least that one made logical sense. But, like, the fact that they keep throwing new reasons at me is just, like, constantly reminding me again and again of how much the original reason also sucks, and how much these new reasons suck even more. Like, it's having the opposite effect that they want. It's like trying to draw attention away from the hole that you punched in your drywall by punching 2 much bigger holes in your drywall next to it. Like, it doesn't draw attention away from the original hole, and also, you're damaging the integrity of your drywall even more every time you punch a new hole in it. Reason number 4, Azure Gleam is kind of dumb. Sylvain! We're finally out of the why are we fighting hell, and we've moved on to characters, yay! So, for the record, this is an extremely minor complaint in comparison to all of the above problems. And on the whole, I believe that basically all the characters in Azure Gleam have, like, new character development, new life circumstances, new things to talk about in their supports. They all do pretty well. But I just have a tiny nitpick for Sylvain. So in the original game, Sylvain's main character trait is that he's a misogynist. He's a womanizer, he's a philanderer, what have you. And his misogyny stems from him being of, like, noble birth, and all these girls only want him for his money and his crest and his status, you know how it goes. And so he's a misogynist, and he learns through his supports not to be that. And that's a pretty good story arc. I like Sylvain in the original game. But in this game, I guess they wanted to, you know, change it up a little bit. So they kind of just got rid of his misogyny during the time skip in this game, which, like, would be fine if they gave him anything new or interesting to do. But they didn't. I don't really recall or remember any of his supports with the other Blue Lion characters, so I'm just going to assume that they were boring and I don't care about them because I refuse to do research for any of my videos. You can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Boost the engagement of the video. The only thing I remember about Sylvain's supports in this game is that in his support with the main character, Shez, his thing is he's trying to make mini portable versions of those big, like, magic fireball shooting apparatuses so that, like, people can carry them around in their pockets. And even normal people who don't know magic can, like, use them in self-defense, I guess. So I guess what I'm saying is that Sylvain's new character arc is that he becomes president of the NRA, which, I mean, I have to hand it to them, it is pretty original. I guess in every timeline, Sylvain is a conservative in at least one way or another. So, like, at first I thought this was stupid and, like, really random, but then I remembered that Sylvain does have a budding talent in black magic in the original game, so I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense, like, he's rediscovering a new passion, that's cool. Like, I thought it was a little bit silly, but also kind of cute. Like, oh, he's discovering this new side to himself and, like, this new timeline. And that made sense because I was like, oh, and they'll make his default class a Dark Knight, obviously, because he classes through lances anyway, and he has this fascination with dark magic. Nope. His default class is Holy Knight, just like 60% of the characters in the game. That's an exaggeration, but Holy Knight is the most oversaturated class in this game right after Gremory. Like, it's just weird that his canon class isn't Dark Knight, because he's never expressed any interest in white magic, but he has expressed it in dark magic in his budding talent in the last game, and in his supports in this game, so like, why isn't his default class just Dark Knight? There's literally only one other default Dark Knight in the game. It's Lorenz, in case you were wondering. And there's like 8 other default Holy Knights in the game, and most of them are already in the Blue Lions roster anyway, so I just don't get why he isn't Dark Knight. I know it's such a small nitpick, but it bothers me so much. In case you were wondering, Holy Knight is the most oversaturated default class in the game. Second, after Gremory. Gremory beats it by a lot, but that's just because I assumed they were going to put Darkflyer and Valkyrie in the game, and then they just didn't finish the game. So, yeah. Also, and I know that this is a huge nitpick, but like, if you're trying to make a smaller version of the big fireball shooting apparatuses, don't you need proficiency in magic to use the fireball shooting apparatuses? I could be wrong about this, but like if you already need proficiency in magic to use the fireball shooting apparatus, you don't need a mini fireball shooting apparatus, because if you're already proficient in magic, you can just have a tome and shoot fire out of your hands. Like, am I crazy? Am I thinking about this wrong? I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. That's all I have to say about Sylvain. And I know that this whole section about Sylvain is just a nitpick, so don't come at me, okay? I'm just yapping, okay? Reason number 5 for Azure Gleam being done is Miquelon. Yep, we're getting the whole Gautier family in this one. Actually, just the 2 brothers, but whatever. So, for those who don't remember, which is probably a lot of you, because Miquelon is not a major character in the series, Miquelon is Sylvain's older brother who was born without a crest, and then Sylvain was born with a crest and was set to inherit, you know, the noble family house, and so Miquelon, like, physically and emotionally abused Sylvain all throughout their childhood because he was, like, envious of his crest and stuff. Yeah. It is worth noting that Miquelon worked very hard to become worthy of inheriting the house, but he just couldn't because he didn't have a crest. So he kind of has, like, a sad backstory, even though he is kind of, like, very evil. So, because he didn't inherit the house, he ran off and became a bandit, and then in the original Three Houses game, he steals the Lance of Ruin, and then you fight him in a tutorial battle, and he turns into a giant black monster because he wielded a hero's relic without a crest, and he dies thanklessly. Miquelon is actually, like, my favorite character in the original Three Houses. I just think he has such an interesting backstory, and he has a much more, like, unconventional design. Like, Fire Emblem definitely likes this pretty boys, but because Miquelon is a villain who's scripted to die, they're allowed to make him, like, a little bit less conventionally attractive. but he's attractive in a way that entices me personally. So I basically think he's hot. But also, I think it was a huge missed opportunity that they didn't elaborate on his situation a little bit more, explore more in depth his, relationship with Sylvain, because he's a really interesting character. He was turned evil because, like, the system was working against him, and even though he's, like, a super entitled evil dude, like, you can kind of understand how he got that way, so, like, he's very... he's just interesting. I just think he's neat. Also, did I mention he's hot? He's really hot. He's really, really hot. Fire Emblem very much does that Star Wars thing where, like, you can tell who the villains are because the villains are always, like, hideous slug monsters, or, like, half their face is burnt off, or, like, they're super old and wrinkly or something. Like, only good people are allowed to be conventionally attractive. But I don't know. They didn't go very hard on Sylvain's ugliness. He just looks, like, rugged and, like... he something about him, man. In case you were wondering who my other favorite Three Houses characters are, it's Hubert and Yuritsa. I might have a type. So as you can imagine, I was so excited when the new game rolled around because I was like, OMG, they're revamping all of these old characters, and, like, instead of having Monica die, they're, like, folding her into the cast. So I was like, yes, playable Miklon. He's gonna get a redemption arc. Let's go. My favorite character ever. I'm so excited. Honestly, if they had done Miklon justice, like, that would have made the whole route for me. Like, I just wouldn't be making this video right now. And I was doubly hyped for this because Azure Gleam was the last route that I played. So in the other two routes, I had already seen how they revamped all of these old characters that died in the other timeline. So I was like, yes, we're revamping Miklon. It's gonna be great. He's gonna be playable. He's gonna get a redemption arc. I'm gonna marry him. Like, this is amazing. But they didn't do that, so... Like, when I first encountered him in Azure Gleam, he had been, like, captured and was being forced to fight on our side, like, against his will, so he's, like, on our side but begrudgingly so. And I'm like, yes, he's going to be begrudgingly fighting with us at the beginning, but then later, he's going to find his reason to fight, he's going to have a redemption arc, then he's going to join us officially, he's going to be playable, and, like, it's going to be great, he's going to have some great, like, supports with Sylvain. Like, I was so excited. Like, maybe he'll start off being forced to fight, but then, over time, his peers will, like, recognize his leadership skills, or he'll save someone and they'll thank him, and he'll find a new sense of purpose and then join our side for real. I love a redemption arc. And it would thematically fit into the Blue Lions route, because Dimitri's whole thing in the original Blue Lions route was that no one is ever beyond redemption. No matter how far you've fallen, it's never too late to atone. So, like, this villain redemption story of him being, like, a crazy murderer, abuser person, and then becoming, like, a war hero who atones for his sins. That would be, like, the perfect, like, thematic parallel for, like, a Blue Lions route. But no, he's never playable, he doesn't get a redemption arc, he's forced to fight by your side against his will, and then he dies thanklessly. Even more thanklessly than he does in the original game. Yep, with the addition of Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, there are now 7 canon-completed timelines in the entire Fodlan cinematic universe, and Miklon dies thanklessly in every single one. I bet you're wondering how he dies in this game. I mean, all of you have probably played the game already because you're all nerds, but in case you forgot, they kind of, like, set it up so that, like, Miklon's holding off an opposing army until you get there. And for a second I thought, maybe there's, like, a secret, time-sensitive, like, mission objective, like, if you rescue him in time, then he won't die and he'll join your team. Maybe, like, after we save him, he'll be, like, begrudgingly thankful, but then later during his redemption arc, he'll be, like, actually thankful. Or maybe, like, he saves us later, and then he's like, I paid you back, and it's like a sassy, he's kind of like a loose cannon type on your side. But no, you can't save him. I, like, tried to save him several times, because I was like, certainly they wouldn't just have him die thanklessly again, especially when they went through all this trouble to reintegrate him into the story in this game. But no, I had to, like, look it up, and it turns out you can't rescue him. He's forced to die every time. The game tries to be like, he sacrificed himself to hold them off so that, like, you could get there in time to win the battle. But, like, you don't really get to do that when, like, you introduce him and he's like, I don't want to be here, I hate you all, fuck you all. And then he doesn't really get any other screen time, so that's just like your last impression of him until he dies. I feel like this is just another one of those things, like maybe when they were originally planning the game, they had intended to make him a rescuable person and he could join your team, but then, like, again, they just didn't finish the game. Poor Miklon. Hashtag justice for Miklon. I love you, Miklon. Don't worry, Miklon. Don't worry, guys. Miklon lives on in my Tamagotchi life island. Number 6. As to why Azure Gleam is kind of stupid, the church characters. So, because this game doesn't have a proper church route like the original game, I just kind of assumed that all of the church characters would just be folded into the Blue Lion story route, and that they'd just kind of have like a joint story path. And while you do get most of the church characters in the Blue Lions route, and they have like supports with a lot of the Blue Lions characters, the church and the characters within it itself don't really impact or do anything in the story all that much, unfortunately. Rhea is especially absent, especially given the fact that you're literally fighting this entire war for her. Like, you'd think they'd give her a little bit more breathing room in the story, but no. You can't even play as her at all in the main campaign. Like, you'd think they'd fold her into the main story a little bit more, seeing as how she's the main antagonist of both of the other routes, and the main person you're fighting for in this route, but whatever. Cyril also isn't playable in this route, or any route, probably because he's attached to Rhea at the hip, and Rhea is also not playable. And in fact, he's the only character in the entire game who has a pre- and post-time skip design in the original game, but doesn't get a new, different time skip design for this game. He just goes from, like, tiny 15-year-old Cyril to, like, big, beefy adult Cyril within the span of, like, 2 years. So I guess canonically he shot from, like, 5'1" to 6'1" within the span of, like, 2.5 years. Rip his growth plates, dude. I was really hoping to see more of Cyril in this game, especially because they elaborate a lot more with Fodlan's conflict with Elmyra in this game, but just another missed opportunity, I guess. I mean, the game isn't finished, so I can't be that mad about it. I just feel like the story could have benefited more if the church characters were more prominently featured. Knowing how the finished product turned out, though, they probably would have just offered more bad political takes on why Rhea being a dictator is actually a super good thing. So maybe it's for the best that they weren't heavily involved. It's still weird that they weren't, though. Number 7, Rodrigue dies. Again, sort of. So at a certain point in every route of this game, there will be a special mission objective, and if you fulfill it, you'll be able to recruit Byleth and Geralt, and that'll unlock a special extra chapter later. And if you don't fulfill it, you'll kill Geralt, and Byleth will come back later and kill an important person in whatever route's storyline you're currently participating in, as like a punishment for the player for not completing that special mission objective and choosing to kill Geralt instead of recruiting him and Byleth. And then later, you'll have to end up killing Byleth and, like, revenge for killing that one person. In Azure Gleam, the important person you save / don't save by recruiting / not recruiting Byleth is Rodrigue. I've never really cared for Rodrigue as a character, but at least I recognize that he's family to Dimitri, and in the original game, his death, or rather him sacrificing himself to save Dimitri, is like an important emotional turning point in Dimitri's character arc. However, in this iteration, whether Rodrigue dies or not, it seems like Dimitri is just kind of like, damn bro, that's sad, or damn bro, that was close. I get that you can't tie a super important emotional beat to something that isn't even guaranteed to happen, but then, like, you just have this dialogue tree that you can tell the game is trying to make into an emotionally significant thing, but just falls completely flat. And because Rodrigue dying is such an important and impactful moment in Azure Moon, anyone who played that route is going to immediately compare these two scenes in their head as soon as they reach that point in the game, and one is clearly much better written than the other. For the record, though, this isn't the only route to drop the ball on the whole near miss slash scripted death thing. The only one who actually handles it well is Claude's route, so, like, this isn't just an Azure Gleam problem, but I still think it deserved a spot on here. Reason number 8. That's 8, right? Reason number 8. The final boss. So the final boss in both of the other routes is Rhea in her Immaculate One form, which is kind of lazy to use the same final boss for both routes, but like whatever, it's at least climactic, and like it makes sense given the church is what we've been fighting the whole time. So I had assumed for the final boss of Azure Gleam that we would be fighting Hegemon Edelgard. You know, this whole time we've been fighting Edelgard and the Slitherers, and Hegemon Edelgard is literally Edelgard augmented by the dark magic of the Slitherers. Like, that just seems like the perfect final boss, right? I mean, it would be kind of disappointing to have all 3 final bosses be reused from the original game, but at least it makes perfect sense in this instance to have it be that. But no. Instead, the final boss of Azure Gleam is just regular human Edelgard being mind-controlled, and Talus, like, just 2 regular-ass units. And the way they, like, bossify them is just by giving them a ton of HP bars. Like, every time you defeat them, it goes, Edelgard rallied, or Talus rallied. And then they're just, like, at full health again. So, it's just really boring, honestly. I just feel like this is another one of those things of like, oh, they just didn't finish the game. Because I know for a fact they have a model of Hegemon Edelgard updated to her new time skip design in this game. Like, she literally gets forcibly turned into her Hegemon form during the convoluted and nonsensical cutscene in which she gets mind controlled. Did I mention how stupid the mind control thing is yet? And how much I hate it? I might have touched on that a little bit. So because I saw that model earlier, I just assumed that that was what they were going to be using for the final boss in this route. And I guess they just ran out of time and didn't have time to implement it. Like, they didn't have time to implement lots of things. It also kind of makes me think that the other 2 routes, maybe one of them had a different final boss planned for it, and then they ran out of time and just threw Rhea's Immaculate One form in as the final boss for that route too. Just like, well, we'll just use it twice, it's fine. Reason number 9, and the final reason that Azure Gleam is dumb, the ending! Yep, it even ends on a sour note. How sad. So after you beat the final boss, Talus is dead, and Edelgard is on the ground, like, still under mind control somehow, even though the person controlling her literally just died, but whatever, I guess. Anyway, she reaches out her hand to Dimitri, calling him by his childhood nickname. She's like, D. She's finally free. And despite all the conflict between these two, all the war and strife, all the disagreements and bloodshed, he can still be the one to help her up. This is great. Like, I love the setup. It's a clever inversion of how he reaches his hand out to her at the end of Azure Moon. And this time, we know it's going to have a happy ending, because in this version, neither of them really have an ulterior motive to yeet a dagger at the other, completely, like, ruining the moment. I mean, come on. That was just kind of rude. And Dimitri helping Edelgard up will harken back to the original theme of Azure Moon, that being that no one is ever truly beyond help or redemption. Even though the story up to this point has been extremely questionable, at least we can still have a happy ending. Perhaps the happiest ending of any timeline in the whole Three Houses cinematic universe. Except that Dimitri doesn't take her hand and help her up, instead opting to just turn his back and walk away like a total douchebag. This ending is so stupid and baffling, I don't even know where to start, except I do, because I wrote a whole outline for this video and I have all of the reasons listed out here. There are 6, but I am once again reverting back to letters. Letter number A. It totally spits in the face of the original theme of Azure Moon, you know, no one's ever beyond redemption. I guess it fits perfectly with this route's theme, which appears to be make the easier choice regardless of your own morals and then rationalize it to yourself later with unhelpful platitudes. Letter number B, when Dimitri reaches out his hand to Edelgard at the end of Azure Moon, it's because he's learned that no one is beyond forgiveness. And even though Edelgard betrayed him, he's still willing to give her another chance. And even though in that moment she betrays him again, this time he doesn't fly into a murderous crazy spiral. Instead, he seems more sad that Edelgard was unable to change like he did in the end. It doesn't really seem that he regretted reaching out his hand or that he wishes he'd never even bothered with her, because that would again contradict the entire theme of Azure Moon. Letter number C, in this remake, they're handed a perfect do-over where Edelgard is in a much more redeemable position, and they don't even bother. They just have Dimitri walk away, like he's the star of an action movie walking away from an explosion in slow motion, and it doesn't even properly evoke the cool feeling of that because there's no explosion to walk away from. I don't even get why he has seemingly more animosity towards Edelgard in this end scene, in this timeline, than in Azure Moon. In Azure Moon, she was way more evil and betrayed him in far more personal ways, and he still reached out to her then. But in this timeline, they're basically just two war generals with slightly differing political ideologies who just happen to know each other and happen to be on different sides of a conflict. Yeah, no, that's the ultimate betrayal. Couldn't possibly reach your hand out for that person. Although, I guess maybe them barely knowing each other in this timeline is why he doesn't reach out. Edelgard's like in a super vulnerable position, asking for emotional support and calling Dimitri by a very affectionate nickname, and he's just like, whoa girl, I don't even know you like that. I guess love is truly closer to hate than it is to neutrality. But even if that is the case, it's still stupid. Just have him reach out to her hand. Give the game a happy ending. You couldn't give the game anything else good, at least give it a good ending. Whatever. And that's all the reasons why I didn't like Azure Gleam. But don't click off yet, because I'm going to tell you how I would fix it. But first, a little intermission to tell you about all of the things I liked about Azure Gleam. So now I'm going to tell you about the things I liked, so you know that I'm not completely biased against this route. I can find things to enjoy. I'm not a total party pooper. Number one of the things I liked, the characters. The Blue Lions have always had the most interesting interpersonal dynamics, and that hasn't changed in this new game. Everyone is childhood friends, / went to school together, / family friends, / found family, / trauma bonded from that one-time genocide happened. So the Blue Line supports especially always feel like they have a bit more substance over just like the sillies that tend to, plague most of the supports. Not that I dislike the sillies, I love sillies. Number 2, Felix. So I mentioned in the beginning of the video that the choices for some of the tertiary lords were a bit odd, but Felix was chosen as the tertiary lord in Blue Lions, and I think it was a good decision. Since he's immune to permadeath, he gets to appear in more pre-animated cutscenes and mandatory dialogue trees, and I think he was the best choice they could have chosen for this role. He has some good emotional beats and stuff, and he's very relevant to the political goings-on in the story. He's certainly better than both of the other tertiary lords and the other routes, that's for sure. Do you like how half of my Christmas lights are just broken? Number 3, the Dusker fix. So in the original game, the people of Dusker are discriminated against because of their alleged regicide of the King of Fargus in the tragedy of Dusker. But it's revealed to the player that the people of Dusker were in fact framed for that by the Slitherers, and that both their genocide and discrimination were completely unjustified. I mean, not that discrimination or genocide is ever justifiable, but you know what I mean. But in the original game, that information, that it was completely unfounded, is never made public. So even at the end of the game, the public is still racist as hell and blaming the people of Dusker for something they didn't do, which honestly was always one of my biggest problems with Azure Moon. But in this timeline, they make it public right away. They don't even wait till the end of the game. They do it right after the time skip. They're like, yep, even though this is going to be a shock to the public and it'll really shake up public opinion, we need to do it because it's the right thing to do. And I agree. You should stop racism. Being anti-racist is good. Honestly, this alone, especially happening so early in the game, made me really excited for this route, but then they immediately double back on the whole doing the right thing, regardless of public opinion thing when it comes to siding with the church in the war, which kind of killed any moral conviction I was feeling. But I guess at least they draw the line at racism. I mean, if you're gonna draw the line somewhere, you could do worse. Speaking of racism, number 4 on the things I like is Ingrid. Is there anyone watching this video who used to follow me on TikTok? Anyone remember hashtag Ingrid hate TikTok? Those were good times. Simpler times. Ingrid's racism storyline in the original game was, like, handled so poorly. It's one of my least favorite parts of that game. She basically learns to tolerate Dedue only because she has to, but makes it very clear that she still hates people from Dusker because, you know, they killed her fiancé, except they didn't, you know, they were framed. And even if they did it, you shouldn't judge a group based on the actions of a few people from that group. Hey, maybe that could have been the lesson, but no. She just stays racist in the original game. But with this new timeline and the truth about the tragedy of Dusker being public, I just thought they'd, like, sweep it under the rug and have Ingrid stop being racist because she learned the truth. But no! She's still kind of racist, but in a good way? Let me explain. She has a whole story about deconstructing her racism. Like, it didn't just go away overnight once she learned the truth, because it's a learned behavior with a pattern. You can tell she feels genuinely bad about it. She even acknowledges that even if what she'd been told about the tragedy of Dusker were true, that it still wouldn't excuse her past behavior. The story even goes into how even though she knows that her racism is wrong, she still feels kind of uncomfortable around people from Dusker because it's ingrained, and she doesn't want it to be, but it is. And she recognizes that it's no one's responsibility but her own to deal with it. She apologizes to Dedue. Her final support with Dedue is locked behind a support with Dimitri, where she confides in him that she wants to make amends properly, but she's just not ready because she still has this ingrained bias, and she doesn't want to unintentionally do something that might upset him. Dimitri offers to take her to a Duskerian restaurant to try and get her more comfortable around people from Dusker, but she declines because she recognizes that she still isn't ready for such a big step, because she thinks that her being visibly uncomfortable might make others uncomfortable. Ingrid's whole racism arc in this game honestly exceeded my expectations. I was just looking for, like, a proper apology and an I know racism is wrong now. But instead, I got a very realistic and nuanced look at someone deconstructing and de-radicalizing themselves out of bigotry, which is, like, pretty cool. I was not expecting that from this game, especially from Ingrid. Like, past me would never believe me if I told her one of my favorite parts of a Three Houses spin-off game would be Ingrid. And yet it is! Isn't life wonderful? And that's the end of the list of the things I liked. You'll notice it's much shorter than the list of things I didn't like. So now we move on to how do we fix the game? And my suggestions for fixing the game are also in a numbered list. Number 1, why are we fighting? I promise that the why are we fighting is only one bullet point in this list. Obviously this bullet point is, like, the biggest issue of the route, but I think I have a solution for it that also solves a lot of the issues I had with this route, not just the why are we fighting thing. We just have the church characters be a lot more present in the route. We can still have the same setup for the war, like the Blue Lions join the church's side just because of the complex political drama, but then have the Blue Lions and the main character actually communicate with Rhea and the others, and then maybe they could provide better reasons as to why we should be fighting. Or maybe have the main character and Dimitri confront the church people about why Edelgard and the others feel the need to start this war against the church. Maybe they'll be more open to hearing that perspective in this timeline because she's not working with the Slitherers anymore. Maybe Rhea is, like, very resistant to these ideas at first, but when she's on the ground helping with the war effort because she'd be replayable in this version, in the version that I'm fixing. When she's on the ground helping with the war effort, she gets to know more ordinary people, better understands the struggle of the average person, and gradually becomes more open to new perspectives. Rhea is a dictator, and her iron fist approach to ruling is generally not great, but she's also a complex character whose need for complete control is forged through extreme trauma. She believes that what she's doing is for the best, but by being forced into close proximity with those she rules over, she could learn otherwise. She could even confide in the other characters about the trauma of losing her family, which is extremely relevant to the Blue Lions because basically everyone in that house has some serious family trauma, and Dimitri in particular went through a very similar tragedy at the hands of the same people who killed Rhea's family. Having Rhea develop as a character and change her perspective, makes us feel better about being on her side and gives us an actual reason to want to fight for the church characters. B, gives her character development she's been missing in basically every other route. C, ties back into Azure Moon's original theming of how no one is ever beyond redemption and it's never too late to try and atone for the harm you've done. And D, changes the overarching theme from you shouldn't ever do violent revolution because it's bad to instead of doing violent revolution, attempt to do things non-violently and trust that even your worst enemies are capable of change. That way, you're not just saying, don't do this, it's bad, but you're providing an alternative, which is always better. And because it's a video game and you still need to fully flesh out the route with the levels, you can still do the stupid mind control thing or something similar, or body snatching or whatever, just so we have a bad guy to fight for the rest of the game. Like, have Dimitri and Rhea attempt to stop a battle so they can sit down and negotiate with Edelgard, who is initially skeptical, but she senses a profound change in Rhea, so everyone disarms in order to have a civil discussion, and then Edelgard can get attacked by Talus and, mind controlled / body snatched / thrown into a cellar dungeon or whatever. It's still kind of dumb, but at least this way we clearly established that they had to wait until her guard was down to do this to her. Then Edelgard's army gets taken over by the Slithers, and then we can just fight the ontologically evil snake people for the rest of the game. And maybe when we're fighting the Slithers and we have the church on our side, maybe that's when we can tap into Shez's lore a little bit, maybe Sedith and Flayn can dig into some of the church's archives and we can figure out how Shez is related to the Slithering people. We can finally get that information on, who Shez's mom is, because, that's brought up at some point, but then never elaborated on. We can figure out who the fuck Epimenides is supposed to be. And we can learn more about the ancient conflict between the Slithers and the Nabateans as well. Just, in general, more lore is always good for me, but also I'm autistic, so that's just a quirk of that. Also, learning more about the lore in the second half of the game after Edelgard is mind-controlled would, give us something else to do story-wise besides just, go there, defeat that person, and then just, repeating that until the very end of the game. Just, throw some more stuff in there. Lore. I love lore. And then finally, at the end of the game, after the final boss against Talus and Hegemon Edelgard, yes, we're changing the final boss to Hegemon Edelgard because it's cooler, both Rhea and Dimitri can reach out to help up Edelgard, again, reaffirming the theme of no one being beyond redemption, and even your worst enemies are capable of change and deserve a second chance. And that's, so meaningful to have both of them reach out to Edelgard, because, both of them literally view Edelgard as their mortal enemy in, all of the other timelines. So, it's the perfect ending. Why can't we just have a good ending? Number 2 on the list to fix, Miklon. Just make him recruitable. Yeah, it's really that easy. Just make it a special mission objective. If you get there on time, you recruit him, and if not, he dies. Once he's recruited, his character development and redemption arc can take place over supports, so that whether or not he dies doesn't really affect the core story. He can have a support where he makes up with Sylvain, one with Dimitri about, his redemption arc and him serving in the army and stuff, and a support with Dedue about dying thanklessly in an extremely gruesome way after transforming into a demonic beast. It's a very specific experience, but one I think they could relate on. Or, like, if you're really set on him having a scripted death, I think he should go out in a blaze of glory like he did in the first game. Like, picture this. In the chapter where Talus blasts Edelgard and turns her into her hegemon form, have a cutscene where, like, everyone's retreating from there. But the explosion from the transformation hit Sylvain, blasting him back and dropping the Lance of Ruin. He's too injured to get up, and someone in the background is like, "We won't be able to retreat fast enough." Sylvain reaches for the Lance of Ruin, but he's too weak to fight. He's not going to be able to help hold off Hegemon Edelgard while the others retreat. But then, from off-screen, an arm reaches and grabs the Lance of Ruin before he can. The camera pans up. It's Miklon. He looks at Sylvain and says something epic like, "After this, we're even." He takes the Lance of Ruin. He runs toward Hegemon Edelgard to hold her off so that everyone else can have enough time to retreat. Sylvain reaches out. He's like, "No!" But Felix drags him away from the battlefield. Then, as everyone's retreating, Miklon gets struck. He's knocked back, but he gets back up. The Lance of Ruin glows brighter as Miklon continues to fight. Then he charges forward with a fierce battle cry. The lance releases dark magic surrounding him like it did in Three Houses, but this time he's not scared. He just holds the lance firmly and charges forward, transforming into his black beast form, and rams Edelgard with his big beast horn. Then there's a full-on kaiju fight. It's crazy. Yes. Yes, you see the vision. You see the vision, right? Then you see the others as they're retreating. They look back at the fortress to see the Black Beast get struck down by Hegemon Edelgard. He's been defeated, but not before buying enough time to save his brother, as well as lots of other soldiers. He died a hero, and Sylvain looks back at the fortress like, "Miklon." And then, in a later mission, one of the enemy generals can have the Lance of Ruin, and you can get it back when you defeat them. And then Sylvain can have, like, a dialogue section where he's holding the Lance of Ruin, and he's like, "Brother." Don't get me wrong, I would much rather have him recruitable than have that whole elaborate cutscene that I just espoused, but honestly, a kaiju fight makes everything better. Like, let's be real. Number 3 on how to fix the game, Sylvain. Now this is a huge hear me out, okay? But we make Sylvain trans. Now hear me out. I said you need to hear me out, okay? Now I know what you're thinking. This trans girl is going around making everything trans, spreading the woke mind virus, and bringing about the downfall of Western civilization. And, well, yes. But also, I think it would give him, her, something new to do. Also, I'm going to keep referring to her as Sylvain. She's going to be one of those trans girls who keeps her old name, even though she transitioned, like Birdo, I guess. Like, I just think her being trans would give her something new and interesting to do. Like, it would recontextualize all of her past misogyny as her trying to perform extreme masculinity in order to overcompensate for the fact that she doesn't actually desire to be a man. Like, that's so deep. And of course, that wouldn't excuse her past behavior, so maybe she feels a little sheepish around the other Blue Lion ladies because she wants some girlfriends but is super embarrassed about her past behavior. I also like to imagine that she's right at the beginning of her transition while the story is taking place. That way some of her supports with the other girls can be like them teaching her about fashion and makeup and doing girly things. I feel like Annette and Mercedes would be especially good in that sort of mentor role. Like, you can't deny that that would be really fun. That could also explain why her redesign includes that ridiculously big scarf that just doesn't go at all. She's like, "Mercedes, look at me accessorizing. Isn't this, like, so feminine?" And Mercedes is just like, "Yeah, you're looking great, sweetie." You could even have her go to Ingrid for, like, makeup or fashion advice. and Ingrid wants to give her advice, but she's kind of a tomboy and doesn't really know about stuff like that, but she's too embarrassed to admit it, so she just ends up accidentally giving, like, really bad advice. You could have Sylvain afraid that Felix is transphobic because he's been acting standoffish, but when she finally confronts Felix about it, Felix is just like, what do you mean? I've always acted like this. Like, not everything is about you. Like, she was just reading too deeply into things. And best of all, you could have Sylvain's dad be disappointed in her because, like, he's afraid that there won't be an heir to the noble line. And then she could bond with Miklon over how they're both disappointments to their father. Because if there's one thing that brings estranged siblings together, it's shitting on your parents. And then number 4 on how to fix things, and my final point, instead of having Rodrigue die / almost die at that one pivotal moment in the story, since we're already tying Rhea more intimately into the story, just have someone close to her almost die instead. Like, have it take place right at the point in the story where she's really struggling to change her ways. She's really frustrated and makes a cold and calculated and kind of heartless decision regarding the war effort, something she would have done, like, pre-character development, and then have that decision result in someone important to her dying / almost dying, depending on whether you complete the special mission objective. And through that, she learns the error of that kind of distant and heartless decision-making she's been doing for centuries as a ruler. Like before, she never felt the impact of her cold and calculated decisions, but now it's different because it's affected someone she loves. And through that, she now sees how much suffering she's been causing others, serving as an emotional turning point in her character development. I know that the way I'm rewriting the story, it seems like I'm featuring Rhea more so than Dimitri, but I'm imagining Dimitri kind of serving as a mirror / character foil towards Rhea throughout her whole new arc. Like, he's the one who's there for her while she's doing all this changing. So, like, it's still his route, but also Rhea's. And also, if we go back to Dimitri's thoughts on how you shouldn't do change violently, but instead work to change the system without violence, him spearheading Rhea's redemption arc would actually be him putting his money where his mouth is with that sort of ideology. And yeah, that's why I didn't like Azure Gleam, and how I would change it, and also the things I liked as an intermission. I hope you liked this video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell, and hype the video, and all the engagement stuff. Be sure to comment on how stupid you think my opinions are, and I'll probably be making a video about Fire Emblem Engage at some point, but I do plan to make YouTube videos that are also not Fire Emblem related. I plan for this channel to just be about a bunch of stupid nerd shit that I feel like talking about. So if you're looking forward to more of that, and more magic wands, and more nails, and more bows, then, you know, maybe like, comment, and subscribe. Maybe, just maybe, you know? Say goodbye, Mousu. Bye-bye! Bye-bye!